Okay. They see? Okay. Good. Okay. Hi, good evening, folks. My name is Shannon Heafy, and I'm the Air Quality Permits Program Public Participation Coordinator. I want to thank everyone for coming, or I should say coming out tonight, listening this evening and participating in this informational meeting. I've got a little statement to read, so give me half a second here. Excuse me. So, like I said, I'm Shannon Heafy, and I'm with the Air Quality Permits Program. Ms. Sana Sarasak, who is our program manager, is also here this evening, and she's actually one who's going to be the permit engineer for this application. The company this evening is being represented by Mr. William Miller, Principal, Ms. Courtney Miller, Community Contact with Vaughn Greene Funeral Services, Mr. Neil Lanzi, Partner with Wright Constable and Skeen LLP, and Ms. Lisa Sparks, Attorney with Wright Constable and Skeen LLP. Mr. Bob Bathurst with Century Engineering, Mr. Michael Tricochet, and Mr. Jeffrey Farron of Matthews Environmental Solutions, and Mr. Doug Bimes, Architect. This informational meeting is being held as the first step in the permitting process for an air quality permit application submitted by Vaughn Greene Funeral Services for the installation of one Matthews Human Crematory to be located at their property, 4905 York Road, Baltimore City, Maryland. I have some housekeeping items to go through before we begin. So first, another thank you for participating in this online informational meeting. During this time of COVID, the department is making every effort to provide information to the public in the safest possible way. The docket of information, which includes the permit application, is available for public review on the department's website. You go to the Air Quality Permits Program main page and click on the link for the scheduled informational meeting. There you'll find the documents related to this project. And as we go through the permitting process and the reviews and I'll discuss in a moment, that docket will be updated as we go through it. So second, after the company makes its presentations tonight, I will open the floor for questions. Please use the raise hand button. The hand symbol will be red when your hand is raised. Your name will be called and you'll be unmuted to ask your question. And once that's answered, we'll put you on mute again and go to the next person. After everybody has had a chance to ask a question, if we have time, we will be able to go back and invite more folks to ask more questions. And as this is an air quality permit application, we'd like to focus on that, those questions related to air quality and emissions from the proposed crematory. The department does not have any authority over land use or zoning decisions. The department does, however, require the permit applicant to submit evidence of zoning approval, and that is included with the application, which is, again, in the docket online. Third, this is not a formal hearing, so we will not be taking any formal comments or statements this evening. This is the informational meeting. It's our very first step in this process. We're here tonight, you guys and the department, to listen to the company's presentation and learn more about what they're looking to install. So let's see, the fourth one, let's see. The information, this is really important, folks. The information that's being presented here tonight is the exact information that's going to be presented at the in-person informational meeting next week. That in-person meeting is intended primarily for those who do not have the means to participate this evening. If you're attending tonight, so if you're here tonight, we encourage you, please don't come to the in-person meeting. There are limited spaces, and well, it's for your safety. With the COVID, we really are trying to limit that. Obviously, if you have questions that you don't get answered this evening, please let me know. My information is on the agenda, and I will make sure that where's my phone number? Well, I'll make sure you have my phone number at the end of the evening, or my email, which is easiest for me to contact you back. And we'll answer whatever questions we can. I'll make sure that they're addressed. And again, as this is the first step, we have not done the technical review of this application yet. That will not happen until after this evening and next Monday. Sorry, whatever next week's in-person meeting. So the questions, the concerns that are raised tonight and next week will be taken into account when the technical review is done. And at that point, Ms. Sarasak, she'll make a determination whether or not the proposed project will meet our air quality standards, our regulations. If it doesn't look like it's going to meet these requirements the way it's been proposed, the company will have to go back and come up with some other way to either operations or some other way to meet our requirements. But if it does look like it's going to meet the requirements and our limitations, Sana will draft a tentative permit, and that will be included in the docket for everyone to review. At that point, we'll hold a hearing and we'll take formal testimony on that draft. And then, you guys, everyone who has signed in tonight, everyone who attends will be notified directly about this once we get to that point. But again, the technical review will take some time. It really is technical. It is, it's going to be a very thorough review. So it won't be like next week. It'll take some time, which is why, again, if you have questions, please feel free, send them my way. I will pass them on. If I can't answer them directly, I will pass them on. But if you have a technical specific question tonight, not likely able to answer it until after Sana has done this review, just to let you know there. As we go through this, when we get to the tentative point and we get ready to do the hearing, you will be like I said, you'll be notified. Make sure I hope so. Well, the folks that are contacting us through the phone tonight, you've all registered, I believe. I need to make sure I think I have everyone's email address. You can certainly verify with me that you've sent it in. You'll get an individual notice. There will be postings in the newspaper, and the elected officials will be notified, and it'll be posted on our website. These are all the same steps we take for every notice that goes out for a public review opportunity. So at that time, once we are notified, you all are notified about the hearing, you also have an opportunity to request an additional period of time for review. And it's a one-time 60-day extension that you can request. It has to be in writing, and it has to come to me before the end of the comment period. And again, all of that will come further down. It'll be in your notices, and so that information will come to you. So I guess I'm going to begin. If you have a moment, we're going to start. You guys are ready? Okay. So I'm going to be the representatives of the Vaughn Greene Funeral Services are going to start their presentation. I'm going to start with Mr. Neil Lanzi. He's going to get started, and then we'll go as we go through that. Then I can open it up for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it, and welcome everyone. I'm Neil Lanzi, attorney with Wright Constable and Skeen, along with Lisa Sparks, also of Wright Constable and Skeen. We're here on behalf of the applicant, and what I'd like to do first, if we could go to the next slide, please. And I would like to welcome members of the community that are here, Delegate Boyce, Councilman Henry, and any other elected officials. Thank you for attending. Okay, and rather than hear from the lawyers, I thought you'd probably rather hear from the business owners. So what I'd like to turn it over to Bill Miller and Courtney Miller to talk a little bit about themselves and their business.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you so much for the kind introduction. We want to honor everyone taking a few moments to join us this evening. I am here. I am the community liaison for this particular project. Also work with strategic development and planning within the company. Also here I have my father, Mr. William Miller.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Yep, so we can provide just a brief background about the company. As Mr. Lanzi mentioned prior to us really getting started, we are a very proud, community-oriented, family-owned and operated business. And we have deep roots in the community. It is really a heart for service and a ministry in terms of what we do and the services that we hope to provide for our families here.
We have been in business for approximately 26 years, and I'm happy to say that in that time we have served tens of thousands of families, and families have been extremely pleased with our services, and we certainly want to continue that tradition.
Thank you, Mr. Lansing.
Thank you. So as you have heard, we're here today for the application for the air quality permit for the new cremation facilities at the existing funeral chapel, existing funeral home in Govins. And there's going to be a bit of a back and forth just because certain people on the team that are working with Vaughn Greene are better equipped to answer some of the questions. So what I'm going to do, if we could go to the next slide. And maybe Bill and Courtney maybe say a few words about cremation.
Cremation services seems to be a growing trend in the U.S. We see it happening more aggressively in the West Coast. It has slowly over the years made its way to the East Coast. In the very early years of our business, we saw cremation rates that were probably in the neighborhood of about 4 to 5%. But in keeping with current trends, we have seen that number increase. And at this point in time, based on what we're hearing from prognosticators, cremation is probably going to be the most popular means of disposition going forward. If you look at some of the statistics, you'll see estimates of 60 to 70% by the year 2025, 2030. So it is, again, a growing trend, and we certainly want to make certain that our organization is prepared to manage the needs of our families.
Could go to the next slide. Thank you. And what I'd like to do next, I believe you may have heard some names in the beginning, but just kind of introduce again those that will be working with Vaughn Greene Funeral Services on this project. You've heard from Bill Miller and his daughter Courtney, and I've introduced you to Lisa Sparks from my firm. And then we also have William or Doug Bimes. He's the architect with Castles and Cottages that has designed this project, and you'll see some slides as we move forward. Also with us tonight are Michael Trikosh and Jeffrey Barron from Matthews Environmental Solutions. And last but not least, Bob Bathurst, civil engineer with Century Engineering. So we're all working together to help with this project and also answer any questions that you all may have this evening or in the in-person meeting. You can go to the next slide, please. And this slide shows those of you that are participating are probably fully aware of where it's located, but just the general location at York and Rossiter. And as was mentioned, the funeral home has been there for many, many years. And we could go to the next slide, please. And with that, I will turn it back over to Bill and Courtney.
Doug, if you could take over this portion, the installation location and the radius around the funeral home relative to adjacent properties.
Sure. My mic's on, right? Yes, I think it is. The stack location is shown as a center dot. That is the stack flue that comes from the crematorium, and we're showing a 100-foot and a 200-foot radius from those points. Those are the two red diameters that you see on the plan. The next one, I believe, shows it even further out to 250 feet. If you want to go to the next slide. That shows, again, that goes 50, 100, 150, 200, and 250 feet from the center stack location that's proposed on the property.
Okay.
And that's
what I was also hoping to discuss would be, if we could go back a slide or two. There you go. The crematorium is going to be located within the existing garage, and maybe you can expand on that or explain better, Doug. as far as the retort, which is a fancy name for the crematorium, how the garage conversion is going to happen.
Okay, I think if anybody's familiar with the building, there are 3 garage doors, and it's that square area around that center dot where the flue stack would be. That is existing flat roof garage that we will be converting to the crematorium where the retort facility goes into that building. You'll see on later slides that we've done some renovations to, or plan to do renovations to that garage to make it work better with the surrounding buildings of the funeral home.
Okay, we can move on to continue on. One more, okay. All right, this slide obviously is a satellite view. If Bob, you're available, Bob Bathurst, if you want to chime in as to what this shows.
Sure, you should be able to hear me now. So this is just an aerial view of the property, and what you're seeing generally is the parking lot, the existing building, and to the rear of the building, which would be right of the red dot. You're seeing where the address says 4905 York Road. You're seeing the existing garage that would be converted. So the garage is where the crematorium will exist, and the chimney will come out of this central portion of the garage. There's some other labels, if you will, with respect to the wing of the funeral home to the south, which would be down page from there.
Just to add to that, the vacant lot is also owned by the same owners of the Vaughn Greene Funeral Home. And at the bottom of your screen where it has the wing of the funeral home, I believe that is the chapel. So it's kind of a buffer in between the crematory location and any residences further south. You can go to the next slide. So this is a letter that I was asked for purposes of the application to make sure the use was allowed before they proceeded with the application, which makes perfect sense. And so we confirmed with the zoning administrator for Baltimore City that the funeral home, which has been there for a long time as a permitted use, also includes the crematorium within that use as an allowed use. So zoning has essentially signed off on this. I realize that's not part of this permit process, but it's usually a question that would be asked. And we can, okay. I'll turn it back over to Doug.
Okay, this is the rear view of the existing facility from the parking lot at the back of the building. You'll notice in the center is the pitched roof that we've designed over top of flat garage. The garage does look a little industrial in the back of the property, and this slope that we're doing a 12-12 pitch matches sort of the cathedral or the chapel and then the main building's roof slope. And you'll see that the stack that we have planned aligns with the height of the stack of the chimney on both sides of the existing structure. We're not higher than that. If you want to go to the next slide. This is from the side. If you were coming out of the chapel looking at the facility, you'll see the new roof on the right-hand side that covers over the flat roof of the existing garage. We're also carrying similar materials from the existing structure into the building with the wainscot of stone. And then again, you can see the stack height matching the existing facility and the proposed flue stack that we have at the crematorium. And then the next slide, we're trying to create a sort of bell tower look with this stack enclosure. That's why I've just chosen a little detail of the arched louvers that have sort of a Gothic look to it, but it's also lending itself, as you would see, in a traditional bell tower. And then we're stepping it back and up a little bit so to relieve the mass of the actual flue stack. And then the other photos that we have beyond this, I believe, are the 3D versions. You know, if you could Well, this is just the overview of the stack height matching the chimneys on the existing structure, and then we are not going higher than that. And then we've done the roof line with the slate that we're using is done to match the flavor of architecture that's in the main building and as well as in the chapel.
And maybe Michael and Jeff, if you want to chime in here as far as the height and the requirements for the permit, if there's anything you can add.
Yeah, I'll be happy to, Neil. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining in. So pretty much the stack, the height of 40 feet from grade was determined to actually meet the NDE's, the Maryland Department of Environment regulations. But that height will be reviewed and confirmed by NDE during their permit review phase. And like Doug shared, it was also to match the other chimneys of the building.
Very well. We can go to the next slide, please.
Okay, the next two slides are of the 3D model that we did. This view actually removes the chapel from the picture so that you can see the porte cochere or the carport as you enter in off of York Road, the existing structure that's up against York Road, and then the new roof line that we have in the back next to where all the cars are shown in the photo, and shows the vent stack there. And then the other 3D drawing that we have on the next slide shows from, if you were in the parking lot looking towards the structure, you'll see the materials that we're bringing in to mimic the materials that are on the existing structure, the slate roof, and then our bell tower design for the stack enclosure.
Thanks. Thank you, Doug. All right, now we're going to get to the equipment itself, and I will defer to Jeff and Mike if you want to talk about the operations and how this all works.
Sure.
Hey, Jeff. Okay.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Always love to be able to talk about the equipment and how it works and dispel some of the things that that you may think how a cremator works and how it really works. I know for me, when I first got into this business, I thought this was just an oven where there was just a ton of fire that was burning down and just turned everything into ashes, and then that's what was returned to the family, but it's far from that. Here you see on this slide, you see sort of a cutaway diagram of the same unit that the Millers here are going to be getting and installing into their facility. And what you have here is what we would call a hot hearth designed unit. Okay, so obviously you can see we'll just work sort of from the right of that picture over to the left, but you will see that this opening is where you're going to load it up. And the red lines sort of show you the flow of air through this machine. Okay. The way this works is there's two burners in this machine. One is in the cremation chamber right there where you load the body up, and the other one is going to be in the back through that little opening that you see on the far back end of that chamber. Okay, so the one that's in the front is primarily there to light the case, and the other burner is sole purpose is to protect the environment by destroying all those products of combustion that are created when you are cremating someone. All right, those gases are going to flow through that unit in the direction of those arrows, go underneath the floor area and cycle back around and before they go out. Now, this machine is designed to do up to 4 cremations a day. Now, that is up to 4 cremations a day. It's not common to be able to do those 4 cremations every day because that's based on the perfect conditions. And there are so many factors that go into how long a cremation takes. Not everybody's body is built the same. Okay, the first cremation of the day is different than the third cremation of the day or the second cremation of the day. So depending upon how a number of factors, it's very rare to get 4 out of every day out of these things. Okay, out of this particular model. Now you heard me say the secondary chamber. If you follow those red lines, you'll see the first line goes into an opening in the back, and then it goes down, and then it starts coming back towards the front. The whole area under that floor is what we call the secondary chamber. The whole idea here is for those gases, those products of combustion to cycle underneath there, okay, for 1 or more seconds of retention time based on a certain temperature. We found that between 1400 and 1800 degrees, that is the best temperature. If you've got over a second, probably it's going to be closer to 2 seconds in this unit to fully destroy all those products of combustion, particularly if you introduce a little bit of turbulence, which in this case, in the after chamber, there's a few little walls built there to be able to spin that air around and tumble it and recombust all that stuff before it does go to the stack. Now, the equipment is equipped with some monitoring devices. We have a pollution control monitor, for instance, that's at the base of the stack. And you can kind of see it there if you look at the stack on the picture, where you see a little hole in the stack and a little box pointing towards it. That's going to be a pollution control device that if the light shining through there is blocked by more than 5%, the machine is going to go ahead and take corrective action. And it's going to take corrective action to make sure that we have a successful cremation. And a successful cremation is going to be one that is done efficiently, okay, in the right amount of time, but it's also going to emit no visible emissions and no odors, okay? Something that all cremationists are taught. We don't put anything in that machine that doesn't belong. That includes plastics. That includes removing batteries from pacemakers, okay? And any sort of metals, whether it be from artificial limbs or knee replacements or hips or shoulders, all those metals we dispose of responsibly through recycling programs.
And something else I wanted to add to the great description that Jeff stated is that noise from the Power Factor Plus unit is going to be minimal and will not be disrupted to the neighbors or the community.
That's correct. The decibel level is on par with a residential air conditioning unit.
Bill or Courtney, did you want to add anything as far as how you selected Matthews to be the provider?
Well, Matthews has been a provider of retort and cremation equipment for an extremely long time. We know that they have an excellent record. They have tremendous credibility within the funeral service community, and we wanted the highest quality equipment that we could find, and to our knowledge, they are the absolute best.
I would just add, as you have heard, we really want to, take all of these actions with the community that we serve in mind. And so when we think about potential concerns, be they related to, noise, as you mentioned, or any type of emission, anything like that, we are looking to satisfy, that overarching desire for minimal disturbance or environmental impact, and therefore we definitely wanted to mitigate any of those things for the community and alleviate those where possible. And so moving forward with this selection was considering all of those things.
Thanks. And the next several slides, I'll let Jeff and Mike address. So there'll be like 4 or 5 in a row talking about the features and specs.
Sure. We have, let me get to it. Sorry. So we have, as we sort of touched on, or I touched on earlier, we have an emissions monitoring system. Again, that is a pollution control monitor, which is monitoring the amount of light that can be transmitted through the stack, because that's where the emissions are coming. We want to make sure that that is as clear as possible. Most states out there require that you or give you a plus or minus 10%. We typically set ours for 5%. Okay, and that's obvious. We want to err on the side of caution because we want all of our cremators and crematories and operators to be friendly to the neighborhood, friendly to the environment. So we're always going to go a little bit, overboard to make sure that that's going to happen. The Empire 2.0 operating controls are unique to our design as well. And along with a multitude of other advantages there are to those controls, what I think is important here is that you always have a technician on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to be able to assist you, answer questions, and even take control of the unit from our headquarters in Florida. All right. Another part of this that's really, really important is the operators, whether they are in another office, wherever they may be, can get alarm alerts if there's any corrections that need to be made to the machine. If they want to go ahead and monitor what's going on with their operators, they can monitor what's going on and take control remotely straight away. All right. The smoke buster system here is the entire design of the unit combined with the mission monitoring system. This is, again, a hot hearth, what they call a retort. It's a hot hearth unit designed to really destroy all of those products of combustion before they are emitted from the stack. Noise level, part of that is you have air. Air is a big part of cremation. You have to circulate air through the machine for various reasons. And for that, we have a blower on the machine that creates the airflow. So if there's any noise made from a cremator, it's going to come from that blower. So what we've done is we've been able to come up with an acoustic way of encapsulating what's going on there so that the noise decibel level, again, sticks around the same level as what you would hear from a residential air conditioner. Not only that, but any of the noises going on inside the unit, the entire machine is got the most insulated walls in the business. It's about 12 inches worth of insulation, another 2 inches of a vapor barrier before you get to the outer skins. It is a very well insulated machine. And then one of the most important parts here is the part of the machine that's attached to the building, right? And the part that you can see. This is a stainless steel stack. In the old days and in a lot of sort of lower quality units out there, this was an iron stack. And we all know what happens to iron in the winter in Maryland, right? So after time, it's just going to rust and go away. Well, being that we've done this so long, we've learned that, hey, we can use stainless steel and we can line it up with 4.5 inches worth of refractory lining. Refractory being sort of the same material that we use to pour the floor or the hearth, or the same material we use for the roof. In layman's terms, it would be what you would see, like basically what you would pour the sidewalk with or your driveway. But it's a different material. It's used to absorb energy and to retain energy. So, again, that is a really important part because it can also help to process some of those, be the final process in destroying those products of combustion as they're emitting from the stack versus just a metal tube, which would not help, in doing that with the rest of the unit. The machine itself, when it comes to emissions, and I think the next couple of slides, I'm definitely going to hand it off to Michael, but this is a good illustration of really where a cremator stands versus some of your regular everyday things that are going around you, and particularly around the area. There are diesel trucks driving around. There are hamburger joints, and I'm certain that everyone's getting ready to get their fireplace cooked up here soon because I know it's going to start getting cold up there. All right. You will see that when it comes to particulate matters, when it comes to volatile organic compounds, when it comes to nitrogen, the cremator, even at max, and this would be measured at maximum capacity, really has far less impact on the environment than some of your regular everyday items. And if you look at this list, it makes sense because the hamburger joints stove is just piped right out the top of the building. There's no chambers for those products of combustion to go around and recombust and recombust. Your fireplace, everything just goes right out the flue, right? The diesel truck, with the exception of very few, doesn't really have any sort of system to mitigate what's coming out of the tailpipe. So with the cremator, it's a very conscious effort in its design to make sure that every time we have a cremation, it's successful. And the biggest part of that success is to make sure that what's coming out of that stack is safe for the environment.
So the next slide over here is just an illustration of a calculation sheet that we provided with the permit application forms to the NDE. This is part of the technical information that they require so that they can do their proper analysis. And in essence, it just shows in a certain amount of time what could be the potential to emit of the cremation unit. There are certain criteria pollutants that the NDE concentrate on, and we illustrate that, we use the potential operating hours of 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. That does not mean that that will be the operating hours that will be done by Vaughn Greene. But we just wanted to share with all of you that we are providing technical documentation to the MDE so that they can do their proper analysis. On this following slide, pretty much we want to demonstrate that, kind of piggybacking for what I shared, is that the unit, the Power Pack 2 Plus, will meet and will be in compliance with the NDE's limit requirement of 0.10 grains per dry standard cubic feet. We have, this is something that we share with not only the NDE, but with other environmental agencies in the United States. We have emission reports that show that that definitely the machine will emit way less than the limits required by environmental agencies. This is another pollutant, CO, carbon monoxide, that it's also looked at by the MDE. And just like particulate matter, the Power Pack 2 Plus, it provides proper combustion of the exhaust gases, and therefore definitely meets MDE's requirement of compliance of CO. And just because our machine does have a secondary chamber of a retention time higher than 1 second, and it will operate at the temperature higher than the MDE requires, as shown in the slide, 1300 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually for Maryland, they require 1600 degrees Fahrenheit in the secondary chamber, and that's what the unit will be operating at when installed. One of the things that the NDEs requires is that they need to monitor the temperature of the secondary chamber where the combustion of the gases is done. The temperature needs to be monitored and needs to be recorded. The machine will be equipped with a monitoring system of that temperature and also with a recorder, which at least if any MDE inspector wants to come and verify that, at least that's something that Vaughn Greene will be complying with, and we're going to help them be compliant with MDE's regulations. Like we stated, the secondary chamber of the machine and the design of all of our cremation units is actually above 1 second retention time. And something very important is that no burning of PVC plastic bags is permitted to be cremated or to be processed in the cremation unit.
Thank you, Michael. Just to go back to what you said a few minutes ago, and hopefully Bill and Courtney could chime in. You mentioned that when they were looking at the specification that's based on 12 hours a day in operation, but I guess it's your understanding it won't be operated. So I thought maybe Bill and Courtney could explain what their intentions are with operation.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for giving an opportunity to clarify. Again, wanted to acknowledge everyone on the call and thank them so much. So again, when we are taking a look at the actual use of this cremation facility, while the 12-hour maximum is something that was indicated, we have to keep in mind that when we consider our actual capacity, we'd perhaps be doing one cremation per day, if that. So that would probably only take around 3 to 4 hours, and hopefully should alleviate some concerns that this is something that would be operating, you know, all day. And also I want to make sure that individuals have taken a close listen to the environmental mitigation measures to be assured that use of this cremation facility and this particular machine are done in mind of everyone's best interest.
Thank you, Courtney. And now we have your picture up on the screen. So
Here I am.
yeah, so everyone can be aware that Ms. Miller will be the contact for the community. She'll be available throughout the process of the application, and as well as once it's installed if there's any community concerns. So Lisa, is there anything that we missed?
No, I think we covered it. We are about ready for some questions from attendees.
Very good.
Okay, folks. So if you have questions, like I said, just hit the hand button and it will turn red, and we will know that you've got a question to ask. I see that we have some of our elected officials online with us. If any of our elected officials would like, oh yes, Delegate Boyce, if you would like to voice your question now.
Okay, hang on one second, Shannon. Let me make sure I got everybody here. Okay, let's see. Okay, all right, Delegate Boyce, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Hang on one second. Okay, go ahead, Delegate Boyce.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry you can't see me. I am thank you so much for being here and explaining this process, especially as it relates to actually how this happens, as somebody who had her father cremated about 10 years ago, and not even in the same state. It had to be somewhere else because he lived somewhere else. This helped me to even understand how this process works. So I had a couple of questions, and I'm gonna start backwards from the presentation. So the first is, what is the timeline for construction and then use?
Doug, I'll refer that question to you since that sort of falls within your purview.
Sure. We could actually have the facility ready for the install in about 3 months. There's not that much demo. And then from that point, we would schedule for Matthews to come and set the equipment and put everything together and get it operational. I don't know their time frame. They'll have to answer that, but we could have it ready to receive the retort facility in 3 months' time.
Okay, and then we need to add in however long it will take to complete the technical review to be sure that the application as submitted will meet our requirements. So that will take probably a month and a half, 2 months.
It really depends on when I get a good look at this application to determine if I have all the information I need to complete the technical review. So yeah, it will probably be after the holidays, sometime late December-ish or so, if I can determine whether the permit can be issued. And then there's the whole public hearing process. So none of this construction or installation can start, and this is a permit to construct. So this permit has to be issued first before that time frame. So when he's talking about the time frames, he's talking about construction and, you know, how long it would be to get up and operating after the permit's issued.
So I guess I'm saying if permits are issued, we're looking at between permits being issued, public notice, and then the two kind of construction folks, maybe 6 months to a year? Maybe?
Jeff, Michael, what do you think?
Well, for us, it takes us about 8 to 10 weeks max to build this.
Okay. Okay.
Right,
So
and then the rest of it
6
depends
months.
on, yeah, and the rest of it for us, it depends on how much public interest there is to the draft permit.
Okay.
That good,
I should-
yeah, 'cause there's still a whole public hearing stage that
That's-
still needs to be completed.
Yeah, that's fine. And so my next question really goes to operation and use. And so I, for one, personally foresee more cremations happening just in general because of COVID, most importantly. While I know Ms. Miller said that the capacity would not be, of course, the max capacity, I guess I'm thinking in the future, should this go through and the capacity does grow, and there is a demand for, your 4 a day, 6 days a week cremations, kind of explain what that process then would look like and the potential impact.
Okay, so from a permit application review perspective, we would review the application based on the operating schedule that they propose in the application, and I believe that might be the 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and if that demonstrates compliance with all applicable air quality standards, we would issue that permit at the level in which they applied, simply to allow them the flexibility to not have to come back to us at a later date if they do increase production. If it's
Sure.
above that amount, they would definitely have to come back to us for a modification of some kind to be able to increase the amount or install a new unit or something to that effect. But as far as business concerns, I think that maybe the company might be able to address that.
Yeah, it would probably be sort of inconsistent with the growth patterns that we've seen so far in our cremation volume. We've been in business for quite some time, as I've indicated earlier, and we have seen it grow sort of exponentially over the last 3 or 4 years. Right now, we're sitting at about 20%, but we're still lagging behind the more mainstream segment of the market, and certainly behind what we see on the West Coast. So we do anticipate some growth. It's just really difficult to predict. Certainly, if we get outside of 2 to 3 per day, we've exceeded the capacity of the current equipment, and that's not our intention at this point.
And then my last question is, where currently do you cremate?
That's currently outsourced to a private vendor, and we've been doing that we've been doing that since inception, and that has worked well. But we do believe it's important for us to begin to think about insourcing this so that we can share with families that their family member certainly stays in our care from the time that they arrive, which has not been the case traditionally.
Thank you so much.
I think Shannon, Delegate Boyce also submitted a question in the question box earlier. She wanted to know if the slides would be sent to those on the call. I don't know if we have permission from Vaughn Greene to either post this on our website, or we can send it to the participants on the call. So
Thank you so much for that follow-up. So we'd be happy to, send a PDF of this presentation to the attendees. So if they, needed to reference it for anything, if they have some additional questions once they get another opportunity to review, we're happy to provide that information to the community. That's no problem.
Thank you so much.
all right, great.
Thank
So Shannon, just if we want to just make a note that Vaughn Greene will send the PDF, so we would send the information so they can send it to all of the people on the call. Okay.
And I'll add it to the docket so we can people can review it online as well. So that's great. Thank you, folks.
Okay, and so Shannon, I don't know if you can tell which, or if there's any other elected officials that have their hands
Yes,
raised.
Bill Henry has got his hand up.
Okay, so Bill Henry, okay, let me go ahead and unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. Can you all hear
evening.
me?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for this presentation. Second, I want to apologize to anyone from the community that I inadvertently misinformed. I was under the impression that Vaughn Greene already had a crematorium in West Baltimore at the facility on Edmondson Avenue, because when my father passed away earlier this year, we were told to go there to say goodbye to him. And my sister and I assumed that he was taken to that location because that's where the crematorium was, as opposed to being taken to the location on York Road that's closer to us. So we didn't realize that that was just sort of a stopping point and that he would go somewhere else. So you guys don't have a crematorium anywhere in the city already?
We do not, and that is exactly why this is so critical, because we just find that more and more of our clients are choosing this as a primary means of disposition. And again, as I said earlier, with cremation growing, it's imperative that that we are able to maintain control of that process. And I think from a family's perspective, certainly, again, knowing that their family members in our care the entire time is of extreme value.
Well, then I'm not sure who at MDE this question would be for, but how many existing crematoriums are there in the city, either as vendors working with multiple funeral homes or other funeral homes that have their own?
That is a good question that Delegate Boyce had. And I'm just going to look that up real quick. I want to say 55, but I don't want to just rely on my memory.
55?
Yeah, there
Wow.
are, let me see.
Yeah, there are actually quite a few crematory facilities, as I'll say, within the city and in the surrounding counties. We have quite a few in Maryland.
Well, then I guess that with a number that large, then it does even become, you know, more relevant. How many of them are handling multiple mortuary clients, and how many of them are, you know, funeral home specific? So if that breakdown is hard to do right now, I'd be happy to have that information sent to me later, if that would be easier.
We could do that.
I can definitely do that. I think the problem is our database doesn't really differentiate. It just looks for cremators as equipment. So you're absolutely correct. Some of them are cremation centers. Some of them are animal crematories only, and like at laboratories and yeah, animal health labs, federal government.
But it should be pretty obvious if the name of the crematorium is the same as the name of a funeral home.
Right, right. And there are two others that do have crematories on site in Baltimore City. Is On-Site Cremation Center on Fulton Avenue in Baltimore, and Bayview Crematory on O'Donnell Street in Baltimore, two that we have registered in Baltimore. But I believe that there are at least 50 or so facilities total. But I can get a more exact number for you, and I'll send it through Shannon, and she can contact you with that information.
Yeah,
Okay,
I know off the top of my head that there are two facilities in Anne Arundel County that do cremations for other funeral homes, and that they're just cremation centers. Those, yeah, the only ones I can think of right away are those two, and one of them actually, they're both in Anne Arundel County. But yeah, when we're able to get the list together, we can send the list out to you, definitely.
That would be great. Thank you. The other question I had, and this is sort of a housekeeping one, I have this same issue with the school system because they also run their public meetings with this kind of webinar format, which means people attending the meeting have no idea who else is attending the meeting. You know, like we can only see you, the presenters. So how many people are attending this meeting tonight?
Currently, it looks like there are 57 people.
Oh, I
Okay,
think
good.
that includes, no, I think that includes the company. So it's 46 attendees that
And
came in
11
through the registration. Yes, and 11 of us.
Is it possible for somebody who can see all the attendees to share their screen and have all of us be able to see who else is here? I say that just because that's kind of how, in a public meeting, from the perspective of an elected official, we like to know who's actually there and who's demonstrating that they, have concerns about an issue, either expressing support or opposition, whatever. And in terms of for follow-up conversations, it would be really helpful to have known that when somebody follows up with me with questions, but they were here, then I can say, why didn't you just ask that question there from the people who knew what was going on rather than going through me on a secondary basis. But also it lets me check in with people afterwards saying, so I saw you were there. Are you good? Because I haven't heard you express anything one way or the other.
Oh,
Okay,
I understand completely.
It looks like our IT personnel, she's operating in the background. She says she can do a screenshot. So hopefully she can take a screenshot of the attendees. And I don't know if she can, Kate, I don't know if you would send that to me and then I would post that, present it. I could definitely do that.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll try and get that posted before concluding the meeting.
I'll email that to you right away.
Okay, great, thanks.
I also wanted to follow up and also provide the information that we have an in-person informational meeting as well that may assist with your expressed desire to really see faces and hear voices in the community. Due to the nature of the public health environment, if individuals are joining us today virtually, we certainly do think that's a safe option. But if they're unable to join today and want to join us in person on Monday, November 9th, we will have an in-person informational meeting at 7 p.m. In the chapel on our York Road location, 4905 York Road.
Thank you for plugging that meeting. I was hoping somebody was going to do that here. Also, I understand Delegate McIntosh is on the call and would also like to be recognized.
Absolutely, Chair.
Okay. All right. I'm still waiting for that email, so I'll try and post that screenshot a little bit later. But okay, I'm sorry. So you have Delegate McIntosh. All right. Let me find them. Okay, here we are. All right. Okay. Go ahead, Delegate McIntosh. You are unmuted.
So now actually there's a note that Delegate McIntosh had to step off the call, but she wanted to ask these questions to the panel. I'll go through them one by one. One, will a technical review of this proposal include data for Baltimore City, such as the elevated level of childhood asthma, which is 20% more than twice the rate of surrounding counties?
Okay, so the first question. So the technical review, it's not within our purview to, unfortunately, the authority that we have to evaluate whether the emissions from a crematory meet applicable air quality standards. As far as elevated levels of childhood asthma, it's taken into consideration as what we have as our state air toxics program, which does provide some level of protective public health, but as far as like regulated pollutants, they're not completely related to the levels of pollutant and whether it impacts childhood asthma or any of those other types of public health issues. That's actually the Baltimore City Department of Health that you would want to contact for information related to that.
Okay.
And then the next thing, okay.
Second question, can you explain how small particulates emitted by crematorium affects children and adults with asthma and other lung disease?
And again, we do have some information, but most of it is from the Maryland Department of Health and also the Baltimore City Department of Health information that they post on the state of health of adults and children in the state of Maryland. So that's actually where we would recommend that people start first. But if they still have questions or they can't find that information, they're more than welcome to contact Shannon at her email or her phone number, and we can try and find some links for that information.
Okay, and the third and final question is along the same lines. Are there any long-term studies on the effect crematorium emissions have on children and people with lung disease?
Okay, so as far as long-term studies are concerned specific to crematoriums, I don't believe there are. There might be long-term studies with related to air pollution. It also depends on where they were done, how long ago they were done, what level of pollution. So, I can't answer this today. I don't know if there's a place that would have these long-term studies. It wouldn't be specific, as far as I know, unless it was sponsored by crematory associations or some other public organizations, that it wouldn't be specific to crematory emissions. There are people who have done studies on specific crematories in specific areas, and you can definitely internet search those. There are several that talk about crematory emissions, not necessarily with impact to health or children or people with lung disease, but what the impact of the emissions are and where the emissions come from crematories. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, you're up, Shannon.
Yep. Shannon, are there any more elected officials that would like to comment before I move to the rest of the raised hands and the other questions in the question box?
I am not seeing any. Forgive me if there are any, I apologize. I'm not seeing any additional elected officials. I did just notice several questions in the question box that you want to, I'm not sure how you want to address.
Okay, so I'll start out with reading the questions from the question box first and go through those, and then I'll go through all the hand raises as well. So we answered, there were two questions of Regina. Well, the second question Delegate Boyce had was that she just had questions, and the first question we addressed with the slides being sent. And then Sandy McFadden says, there is a crematory on Greenmount Avenue. What are the regulations guiding the number of cremations per certain area? So our regulations aren't related to number of cremations or number of crematories. We don't get to determine how many crematories are located in a specific area. We are actually regulating the types of pollutants from crematories, which are typically combustion source type pollutants. So those types of combustion sources, as you said, as the company showed, can come from diesel trucks, boilers, ovens, all kinds of operations all surrounding. So it's not that we would look at crematories as a whole or every single crematory in an area or how many crematories are allowed in an area. That's actually outside of our authority. That's something that the Baltimore City Planning and Zoning Authority would be able to determine whether they wanted, or allowed more than one crematory in a specific area. But crematories emit what we call typical combustion type emissions. And so those combustion emissions are regulated, and we compare those to what's already being read and by background air monitors to show that they're not exceeding any national or state air quality standards. So that's how we compare it. So we don't compare it crematories to crematories. We compare the types of emissions that are being emitted, which are oxides of nitrogen, volatile organic compounds, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, etc. Okay, and the next question. Okay, that was just a clarification on that last question. We answered Delegate McIntosh's questions. We have Phyllis Gilmore, Vice President for York Road Partnership. She has a question of how many crematoriums are roughly in Baltimore. We did mention there's two facilities that conduct cremations in Baltimore. One was on Fulton Avenue and the other one was on O'Donnell Street. And then I'm not sure what the second question means as far as incinerators. There's obviously the large incinerator in Baltimore City, but as far as, and then I think there's another one in Curtis Bay, but that's in addition to crematories. So I don't know if that's what they mean by incinerators by that question. So maybe you can submit a question in the question box that clarifies that question a little bit. And also, if I don't have the exact numbers today, we can definitely get these questions and get some answers back to you later. And the last one is, how did the particles pollution affect people like me with asthma and other respiratory problems? So we do know that small particulate particles do impact people, and especially people that have other pre-existing conditions like asthma or other issues, COPD, etc. As far as we know, crematories, based on just the level of evidence from emissions, crematories are actually a very small source of particulate emissions, and so, and also they're a very small source of what's called, you know, PM fine, the fine particulate. They're not large combustion sources. They're not like power plants. They're not huge incinerators. You know, so I don't think it would have, you know, would have an impact similar to a boiler at a elementary school or a high school, as far as comparison is concerned. And let's see, the next question we have, my name is Deborah Givens, homeowner on Radnor Avenue. Would the property value go down due to this crematorium? That's not a question I can answer. I don't know if there's anybody from the company that wants to take that one on.
I'll give it a shot. Neil Lanty speaking. There's no indication from what we are aware of that a cremation facility within a funeral home, existing funeral home, would have any impact on property values. If you have your home and you're next or near a funeral home, there won't be any difference, as you saw from the renderings that are shown. It's all been designed to fit in with the funeral home. And then you also heard all the specifications of what, you know, how the equipment works. So it's our belief that most homeowners or people shopping for homes wouldn't even know it was there. And if you're already living there, based on hopefully the presentation that's been given tonight, there won't be seen as any impact that would cause anyone to, you know, want to leave the neighborhood. So we don't feel that having a property near a funeral shop, having a property near a funeral home, with or without the crematory, would make any difference to a purchaser or home values.
Okay, before I get to the next question, I just wanted to see if I can share this screenshot of the attendees. Bear with me while I figure this out. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so I'm just going to leave this up so people can take a look at this while we continue to answer the rest of the questions. Okay, so the next question, has Vaughn Greene considered locations in less populated areas?
Okay.
Anybody from Vaughn Greene want to take that question?
Bill, did you want to address that as far as how you selected this location?
Oh, can you hear us?
I'm not sure. Maybe he didn't hear.
Did we lose you guys?
I'll attempt to answer, and hopefully Bill or Courtney will chime in. My understanding is, you know, you want to have the facility within the premises that you own. So this is one of their facilities they've owned for a long time, and as you heard from Doug Bimes, the architect, they're converting an existing garage. So the structure-wise, there's really no change, and the rest of it is all the safety of the equipment that you also heard. I don't know whether Bill or Courtney want to add anything more as far as to the location.
Yeah, Neil, I unfortunately was self-muted just for a portion of that. And we're contributing based upon the location of the crematory and with respect to the primary building.
The inquiry was more directed at whether you had considered locations in less populated areas rather than the York Road location.
We had not, I'll be perfectly honest with you. The York Road location seemed to be the best fit for us at this point in time, given our needs, given the garage space and what is currently in place there now to support this type of business. So it was simply what we currently have in place.
I just wanted to mention too, I believe it was Mr. Henry who said earlier that he went down to the Edmondson Avenue location with his father recently. And so I don't want to make any presumptions on his statements, but it sounded like his family had a preference to be close to home and to use services. And so I would anticipate that many of your clients may feel that way, that they would like to stay in the neighborhood, stay in the community, be near their place of worship, for their funeral services, and really keep that family member nearby during the difficult time of disposition.
Yeah, I'm not exactly certain why that may have happened. I know that sometimes when we receive family members into our care, especially if it's in the evening, that is the destination point, and things move from that point. So I'm not exactly certain what the circumstances were as to why his identification process took place at that particular facility. But I can tell you just from an operational standpoint that is the typical point of receipt, and at in the evening when we bring in family members.
Okay, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I also wanted to add to very quickly, that I would wholeheartedly agree, with this desire to keep the family member close. And that's why, having a crematory facility to meet kind of increasing market demands for this, where people live, where they worship, where their family members are, keeping them close to home, keeping them in our hands is something that we certainly treasure and value. So, while we have an opportunity and some infrastructure to put this in place, we certainly hope that this adds benefit to our families, and we certainly have evidence that this is something that they may want.
Okay, and the next question I think I can answer, it's will the technical review include looking at factors such as the impact of redlining on neighborhoods, including health impacts, while considering the placement of this one? So as far as health impacts are concerned, we have to follow the applicable air quality regulations and standards that this particular source of air pollution would be subject to. And part of that is demonstrating compliance with our very stringent Maryland air toxics regulations. So how our Maryland air toxics regulations work is that a facility's emissions of toxic air pollutants cannot exceed, or the concentration has to be less than what a worker, 1/100th of what a worker would be exposed to in a work facility to that same emission of toxic air pollutants over the course of a day. And so we measure it based on their property line, which is why earlier they were talking about stack heights and distance to the property line. We take all of that into consideration, and that has to be less than what we consider to be protected above public health by regulation for certain toxic air pollutants. As far as impact of redlining on neighborhoods, I'm not 100% familiar with that terminology. I'm just speaking from the perspective of what we would review as part of the permit application. We would ensure that the emissions of toxic air pollutants the concentrations, projected concentrations, are less than what we deem to be protective of public health as stated in our regulation.
And if
oh, go ahead.
Nope, that's fine. All I was going to do is piggyback and provide just a little bit of content on that redlining inquiry, if perhaps we could. And I think you already mentioned a lot of this. It sounds like the concern was framed with respect to, historically, certain maps in the city or certain zones were drawn with an economic or a racial bias, unfortunately, during the time, and how these same zoning implications that have been persistent kind of over decades in some of these zones that have stayed consistent, how some air pollutants might disproportionately impact, different communities. And so I think the question was being asked through that lens.
Right. So unfortunately at this time, I mean, right now, what we consider environmental justice issues or issues where certain neighborhoods are more unfairly impacted, um, whether it's socioeconomic, racial lines, et cetera, is what we term as environmental justice. Um, a lot of those regulations are actually finally being talked about. I mean, we've been talking about this for over 20 years, but they're finally actually starting to address it at a federal level and then also at a state and local level. A lot of it has to, there's so many things in play, you know, bringing businesses into the state of Maryland versus also planning and zoning areas that are areas that were zoned a certain way and whether they should be prohibited. And unfortunately, those regulations are still being developed at this time. So that's not something we can consider as part of this air quality permit application review, but it's definitely something that's in the works with the department as a whole being one of the stakeholders in the discussions to control the impacts to these certain areas.
I
Okay.
think that we should piggyback Nicole Battle's questions onto this statement because she was asking how many are there and are they always located in minority communities?
No, that's yeah. We have an application currently right now that they want to be located in New Windsor in Carroll County, and I don't believe that's a disadvantaged area. We have one that's going in Salisbury. On-site cremation on the other side of Baltimore was recently permitted, but no, they're not always located in certain specific disadvantaged areas.
Yeah, we do have some in rural areas. We have some in downtown cities. They're widely
Yeah, we have
situated.
them in the suburbs as well. I mean, if you see it, a lot of funeral homes, they're out in suburbs as well. So it's really just the nature of where the services are needed.
Yeah, I could just add, just having worked on projects from Kentucky all the way through to New Jersey, as well as throughout the Southeast in Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Apart from New Jersey, where they're all mandated to be in cemeteries, most crematories are in funeral homes that are mostly located really right there in neighborhoods, and hardly anybody even knows they're there. And this is pretty normal around the country. So I could tell you though one thing. With Maryland, you definitely have probably the most stringent look at how this impacts the environment. So I think definitely your residents are in good hands.
Okay, so just, you know, there are a number of questions. I'm just going to try and get through them very quickly. I know we're going to be, you know, ending this meeting fairly soon. So I think Sandy McFadden's question was already answered. I just want to repeat it. What was the origin of the decision to put the crematorium at this location? And I think Bill Miller and Courtney Miller discussed that already. And then let's see. How often community crematoriums are located in residential communities? That's what Nicole Battle already asked. Will the amount of cremations handled per day and audits be available to the public to ensure compliance? So, you know, that's up to the company whether they release that information to the public, but we do have inspectors that will be inspecting the facility regularly, and they will be checking records to ensure compliance. And a lot of those records are considered, you know, available for public review. So you can file a Public Information Act request to view their files, but then also, I'm sure if you talk to Courtney Miller, you know, the community contact, that maybe she can put you in touch, or even, you know, you guys can have some sort of discussion where maybe you can share information and view records. But once they're constructed and operated, they will be inspected regularly to demonstrate compliance with air quality regulation.
And it's my understanding that that compliance will be part of kind of petitioned public record, if I'm not mistaken. So the public can make inquiries to that nature.
And then we had a question about, are the ones in the city located in residential communities? One is actually located fairly close on O'Donnell Street to houses and like a block away. And same with the other one that's on Fulton Avenue. They're all within a block or two of residences or homes. The one, I believe, on O'Donnell Street is kind of next to cemeteries, and then next to those cemeteries are neighborhoods. Okay. Have you connected with the community by going to community meetings or having conversations with community leaders to understand what the community wants for itself or to hear any concerns? Do you know about the 2 new $40 million schools under construction nearby and revitalization work, including attracting and retaining families to live here? How does your plan for a human crematorium connect with the community vision and their comprehensive neighborhood strategy? That's a very long question. I don't know if on Greene, you guys want to take that?
I can tell you that actually my wife is a member of the Neighborhood Community Association, and actually the new project that you recently, or that you just mentioned in the question, she was not aware of.
She
So
receives regular
she
updates.
does receive regular updates. I guess throughout the year, but she was not aware of that particular project that's taking place. We'd be more than happy to sit down with the community at some point during this process to share with them our additional thoughts about the project and to listen to additional
Right.
concerns and issues that they might have.
Right. And I would certainly add that, it sounds like, there is a concern that, this crematorium would somehow be, particularly harmful or would have some sort of negative implications for the community. Our thoughts are the exact opposite. When you think of funeral service, we really think of a hub for families to gather, a hub for families to grieve, a hub for places to celebrate loved ones in the areas that they know and they love and where they live. So having this additional amenity, having this additional service is something that can provide our families from that community with a heightened experience, with one additional level of comfort during their experience. And so, we do want to also offer that perspective that we really see this as a benefit to our grieving families who have their loved ones in our care. And we always support the community through community efforts, again, through being part of important planning conversations, and we're always happy to do more.
Okay, so the next question is, what can we expect as far as odor goes? Can you give any comparisons? So I'll go ahead and take this question. As far as odor is concerned, properly operating crematory, and the Matthews Environmental Solutions folks can also chime in here if they need to, but a properly operated crematory that has everything operating as designed is not expected to have any odor or any smoke. I did do some research. For the past 5 years, I did talk to our field services program, and they told us that they've received about 5 complaints for smoke or odors from existing crematory facilities, and we have about 55 or so in Maryland, I believe. And most of those were because of improper operation of the burners, or they needed to conduct some maintenance. And so usually there was some sort of a complaint that was called in, and our inspectors went out and they asked the company what was going on and whether it was like a startup issue or a fuel issue that was, and it usually was not occurring for any length of time. So, but as far as what's expected to be operated from, a well-maintained and operated crematorium, there should not be any odors. I don't know if Matthews wants to chime in on that as well.
That was a great answer. That's exactly the right answer.
Right. So the key is properly operated and maintained. So, we do put some permit conditions in the permit that, that require the company to do that. And we do inspect them regularly to demonstrate compliance.
Sure. I can just add to that as far as Matthews goes. I mean, part of this process is going to be 2 trainings. One would be the standard COCP operator training, which has its own Maryland specific chapters on environmental. But then also what Matthews would be providing would be what we would call manufacturer's training or startup training. And there's many states out there that require that when we go to commission the unit, we're also not going to just set up the machine, but we're going to stay there. It's going to be a few days, and we're going to stay there and train and cremate the staff to do it properly, teach them best practices. And then it's always recommended down the road every year, every 12 months, have what we call a PMI, which is a preventative maintenance inspection, where we send one of our trained technicians up. He spends a number of hours going through the machine from top to bottom. He opens up the after chamber. The facility will have to shut down a couple of days ahead of that to cool the machine off. And they're going to go through the whole thing top to bottom and provide a report. And if there's any recommendations on any sort of repairs, it'll be in that report. If not, it'll also keep a percentage of wear in different areas so that we can anticipate when repairs may be needed down the road. But for the sort of volume that we're anticipating here, we would say a visit once a year would be sufficient to keep the machine maintained and in good working order, as long as they go ahead and continue with the best practices that we're gonna train them on when we first start. So.
Thank you. Folks, I want to interrupt for just a quick minute. I'm seeing that a number of people who have raised their hands have also submitted questions in the chat box and are submitting more than one question. We're going to run out of time, and I want to make sure that the folks who have not yet had a chance to ask their questions can do so. But before I even get that far, I see that Councilman Henry has a follow-up question. Can you unmute him, Sana?
Yep, hang on one second.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Henry is self-muted. Mr.
there we
Henry,
go.
you need to unmute yourself.
I
no,
have
we're good.
done so, and I'm happy to hold my question. If you can just, whoever the appropriate person is to answer a question about emissions measurement, if you could just email me that contact information, I'll follow up with them offline.
Oh, that's terrific.
Okay,
I
will
appreciate
do.
that.
So we
Thank
were also going to follow up with you on some of your other questions, so we will definitely do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay, so there's still a few more questions in the question box, and then a few hands raised. I don't know, Shannon, where you want to go with this one.
Well, let's see. Let's go with Hazel Johnson's question. She had her hand up as well and submitted.
Okay, so let me see if I can unmute Hazel Johnson.
Hazel, you are self-muted.
Oh no, she's not. The speaker's not on. So either she has to unmute, or I can read her question.
Let's do that.
She's here.
Okay.
Hazel, please go ahead. Okay, we're not hearing you, Hazel. So perhaps Suna, you could answer the question that she posted.
Okay. Okay. So the question was, the community is under the impression the application says human crematorium will be operating 24 hours a day at 175 pounds per hour, 6 days a week, 312 days per year. Per the call, it was stated 4 cremations a day, duration of 3 hours for a total of 12 hours. Why is there a discrepancy? So I haven't begun the technical review of the application, but I don't know if the application that is posted online says 24 hours. Is anybody aware of that?
I believe it says 8 hours up to 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, is the anticipated possible operational time. The 12 hours per day is the maximum capacity of the equipment that is used to calculate the most emissions that would be generated by it. But I don't believe there is any intention or frankly capability on the machine's part to operate 24 hours a day.
You might be, the caller might have been referring to, as you mentioned, also the slide that was outlining, maximum capacity. And so, as you mentioned, that could be one of her reference points there.
Yeah, and based on our current volume, we certainly don't anticipate utilization of the equipment exceeding 3 to 4 hours in any single day period. And again, that's based on our current utilization or our current volume. So There will probably as well be days that the equipment won't be in use at all. It really depends on how things flow into the funeral home, and we'll manage that accordingly. But at this point, based on our volume and even our projected volume for the next couple of years, we certainly don't intend to exceed 1.5 to 2 cremations per day.
Okay, and you know what? There's another question from Hazel Johnson here. Does Vaughn Greene plan to provide cremation services to other funeral homes?
That is not the plan at this point in time. We are primarily looking to provide only for our own corporate needs at this point, and that's probably the plan going forward as well. I don't anticipate that changing.
I also want to add to the previous question, cremation being a cost-effective, option for families if that is what they so, desire. So, while our current volume may be 1 per day, on some days it, may be less, and we might not use the crematory at all. I do also want to say that the capacity that we will have there to perform that, should a family desire that means of disposition for their loved one, will again provide an additional benefit, an additional amenity, an additional service to the families that we are currently privileged to serve in that location.
Okay. I see that Delegate Boyce has put a question in the chat box. I don't know if we want to try to unmute her and let her ask it, or if we want to read it.
It doesn't look like I'm able to unmute Delegate Boyce.
I got it.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought I had to wait to be unmuted. Thank you so much, and I'll do this quickly, especially if there's community folks that have other questions, and it can certainly answer it offline. But I just want to, and I think some community folks are thinking about this way, but for Michael and Jeffrey, talk about worst case scenario with this crematory, whether it's the worst case scenario of something happening, worst case scenario of a smell, worst case scenario of just a worst case scenario with these this equipment or with this process.
So I'm not exactly sure. A worst case scenario of it.
Of fire. So in other words, worst case scenario is, and it sounds like, again, there's a yearly maintenance, so that has to happen. So anything that would be wrong would be caught then. But you also mentioned a monitoring system that can be monitored from, I guess, different devices from across the country. But I guess, I know some people are thinking about, and for me, I kind of get it, and I get the safety of it. But I guess worst case scenario, what could potentially happen? Whether it's a malfunction, whether it is operator error, what is like the worst thing that could potentially occur, if that makes any sense?
Sure. So what we've seen is that in the worst case scenario, what would happen is we would have maybe a case, maybe it was a overweight case or something that maybe there was a malfunction where it was cremating too quickly. And so if it's cremating too quickly, then that retention time we talked about in the beginning starts to get affected. And so the machine doesn't process the smoke quite as well as it should be. And what will happen then is that you would get some smoke. And the good thing about this unit, and one of the reasons they purchased this unit, is that it's equipped that as soon as that starts to happen, within 20 or 30 seconds, the machine is going to stop the cremation process and go into just processing mode. And it's going to slow that cremation down straight away, and it's not going to even allow it to continue until it has processed everything inside that unit. So the afterburner that's responsible for doing that, the air that it's going to feed it, that's going to kick in automatically. It's going to send an alert to whoever has is logged in, whoever is running. It also sends alert to our technicians who will get on right away. And that is usually about a 4 or 5 minute process that happens. So very worst case scenario, you're going to get about 90 seconds of some smoke before everything starts to clear back up, and then the machine will not be able to continue on until everything is corrected.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we need to take some of the questions that people are waiting online to speak, not the ones in the question box.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to end this in a short period of time, so I don't want to miss out on those folks.
Right. Okay. So we had a hand raised by Curtis Schwartz.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Curtis Schwartz if you'd like to
Thank
make
you
a
very
comment.
much. All right. I live in Rich North Springs, which is the neighborhood immediately to the south of Vaughn, Greene. I've been here about 10 years. I consider Vaughn, Greene to be an asset to the community. We don't have very many businesses that I could say that about. I happen to think you provide a invaluable service. I think it's also a little bit disingenuous to think or to have us think that this is all for the neighborhood. Everything comes down to a cost benefit analysis. You don't buy a product hoping not to use it. You do have 4 locations. So I think it's reasonable to expect all 4 of those locations will send people to the York Road location for cremation. I additionally think that, as you yourself have indicated, cremations are going to be on the rise. They're becoming more popular because funerals are quite expensive. I've been in your building more than one time for friends and neighbors. I think you do a wonderful job there. I live in an elderly community, and I do not necessarily buy into the fact that there will be no odor emissions from the equipment. I think that there's going to be occasions where we are going to effectively smell the cremation of one of our friends or family members. I think that's unavoidable. And I believe that realistically, and perhaps this goes to Phyllis Gilmore's question, I'm not certain, but she was referring to incinerators, which are zoned M2 and M3 in the city. And a crematorium is more or less an incinerator. You're doing this obviously on property because it's financially responsible on your end to make use of your property to the best of your ability. And I'm not faulting you for trying to keep your costs down, but we do have to recognize it for what it is that this is a cost benefit analysis from Vaughn Greene, that this is the most financially responsible thing on your end, and that it would be more expensive even if you brought this business into your own to buy or lease a facility in a more industrial neighborhood. And aside from, I really do believe there will be some, not necessarily particulate, but certainly the odor of burning meat, frankly. I've heard that on more than one occasion, how that might affect our neighbors. Thank you.
First of all, we want to thank you so much for your really sincere, authentic, comprehensive, not only personal experiences with us, but also, your analysis of the situation in terms of cost benefit for all parties. It sounds like you were largely concerned about a potential emittance of an odor that would be, something that you would smell in your environment in which you live. And we'd also ask that perhaps Michael or Jeff speak to some of those concerns.
Well, so the equipment is designed to be to where the emissions are odorless and colorless when it's run correctly. I understand, and having been through some of these, that sometimes the crematorium and the different words used to explain a crematory conjure up all kinds of images of stacks and smoke and odor, and it simply isn't the case. The act of cremation is really just preparing the body, just like embalming, for its final resting place. The fact is that throughout this country, the United States as a whole, cremation is already over 51%. Okay, so it is definitely the way things are going. Cremation is about 40%. The cremation with a service is about 40% the cost of a burial with a service. So you're not talking about a big revenue generator for the funeral home. Usually this is something that they have to do to be able to serve the community, or they won't be serving the community. The community will be going somewhere else if they can't do it. So I know in my experience, like I said, I've done these from Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and where these are located are very, very similar throughout all of those states. And they're in the funeral home and they're in the neighborhoods, and most people don't even know they're there.
Jeffrey,
But
just
as you have said, and as the representatives of Vaughn and Greene have said, this type of service will increase, not decrease. So the thought that you might have one a day or two a day can quickly rise. And as we know with virtually any business or enterprise, it's much more difficult to make changes to something in place than to prevent it in the first place. I am not opposed to funeral homes. I'm not opposed to cremations. If I had my choice, I'd be happy living in the middle of a cemetery where I know my neighbors would be quiet. Vaughn Greene maintains their property. I have nothing against any aspect of their business. I do believe, however, that a crematorium belongs in an M2 or M3 neighborhood.
Okay, Mr. Schwartz, I'm going to have to say
to go back to one of your slides where you were comparing the particulate versus automobiles or trucks or restaurants. Trucks and automobiles by nature must drive the road. Restaurants must be where the people are eating. Okay, a shuttle service to take a body to a crematorium and back, it doesn't have to be done there. This is a
Mr.
choice.
Schwartz, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say thank you for the evening, and I need Pamela Tucker has been waiting for a while to ask her question. Can we unmute her?
Hang on one second.
Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead, Pamela.
Hi, yes, this is Pam Tucker, and I own a vacant lot adjacent to Vaughn Greene, where I plan to build a home. And so I have a question for Mr. Barron. Number one, is there any vibration or heat put out by the unit?
So as far as what you would notice outside in an empty lot, absolutely not. There are some slight vibrations that the blower would make, that you would see that machine maybe move 1/4 of a centimeter over 20 years because of the vibration. So you wouldn't notice that. Heat wise, absolutely not. In fact, the Matthews unit is so well insulated that while it's running, you can go ahead and put your face up against the side of the thing and you'll be fine.
Okay, so it wouldn't disturb, pets, working animals, anything like that. It's not that there's not that kind of vibration that's generated.
No, ma'am. And then as far as decibel level, it's going to be about the same as a residential air conditioner.
Okay,
Ms.
right.
Tucker, if it gives some perspective, Vaughn Greene and other similar funeral services are able to hold visitations in rooms elsewhere within their facility while these activities are occurring. So if
all
it's
right.
totally disruptive to their operations, then it's certainly not going to spread a couple 100 feet away to other properties.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's one more thing for Mr. Barron. An earlier slide showed 2 concentric circles with the center of a smokestack. What were those circles supposed to represent?
I believe that was just the distance out,
Yes.
various distance out from the center of the stack.
Why was it necessary to measure that? Is there something that's supposed to happen at those perimeters?
Mr. Botts would probably be best to answer that question.
Yeah, all that was is part of the submittal that goes to MDE, the asset you put radius points from that stack at those different radius points. So that map that we generated with the engineer was done to go along with the package that went to MDE so they could look at their process for their review.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, as part of the review of the permit application, they have to demonstrate that they don't exceed any applicable air quality standards at their property line.
Okay. I have one very quick question for the Millers. You currently use a private vendor for your cremations. I'd like to know where that is so that I can go to the neighborhood and see for myself that the business is unobtrusive. Can you give me an address?
Okay.
Yep. I would just say, are there more?
Just primarily one.
Yep. Yep. So we can follow up and provide that information.
Yes, we can get that address for you so that you can do any additional.
Because I've called and they seem sometimes kind of secretive, and I guess people don't usually like to talk about it, but I was unable to identify one where I could just go to the neighborhood and see for myself.
We can certainly get that address for you. I mean, typically you might find a crematory, and sometimes they're located in an industrial park.
I want to see one of the ones that's in a neighborhood.
Okay, if you want one that's in a neighborhood, then I would refer you to the one on Fulton Street. It's the Joseph Brown Funeral Home, but I think the crematory itself is branded differently. They mentioned it tonight. I just can't remember the exact name.
Called on-site.
Oh, on-site cremation center.
Yeah.
If you want to get an operational sense and see what that looks like close up, I think that would be your best option, and that's in West Baltimore.
Okay, Joseph Brown on Fulton Street.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll take a look for that. I may just take the bus there, walk along the street, and see what's what.
I think it would give you answers to your question.
Thank you very much. I'm done.
Ma'am.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay, Shannon, we just have a few more questions in the question box. The people that had their hand raised already also indicated they had questions in the question box. So I'm just gonna try and run through these real quick. Christopher Forrest, it says I believe this means from what it sounds, there have not really been any specific research on possible impact and or on residents within the area. So it's not specific research on the area, but it is statewide regulations and also governed by federal air quality control regulations as to what can be installed as far as sources of air pollution in the state of Maryland. Central Maryland in particular has, as you know, it does not have great air quality, so they're extremely limited as to what can be installed in Central Maryland. A crematory is not what we would consider a major source. It's a minor source of emissions, and so we do get a large number of these permit applications throughout Maryland, whether it's in Central Maryland or on the Eastern Shore or Western Maryland. And the regulations differ a little bit when it's out in more rural areas. They're allowed to have more units, and they can meet air quality regulations with more units, whereas something in Central Maryland may only have 1 unit or 2 units at maximum. So there has been research on the impact of air pollution in the area and what is allowed. So that's governed by state and federal air pollution regulations and the Clean Air Act, the Federal Clean Air Act. And what's determined to be an acceptable risk is, like I said, what's within regulation to be determined to be protected for public health. And that's something that you'll get another opportunity to see when we actually review the application to determine if it does indeed comply, what types of permit conditions they would be subject to. All right, so the next question, one was just, can you add my name to the attendee list? Karen Anthony. So Shannon, can you just make a note that on that attendee list, under one of the Sandy McFadden's, we want to add Karen Anthony?
Yeah, I can do that, but I'm going to need Karen's email address. So perhaps Sandy, you can contact me with Karen's email address so I can get her set up separately.
Okay. And then it says, would this facility handle the request for your families at your other funeral homes? I think that question was answered already. And then, okay, Bill Henry asked for information to be sent on emissions measurement, which we'll send in the next day or two. Actually, tomorrow is election day, so it'll be sometime later this week. Another question or comment, we're not against the need for crematoriums, the need and purpose. With that being said, if a respectable amount of the community expresses they do not feel comfortable with or comfortable and or rather not have a crematorium located within the York Road area in the heart of a residential area, would Vaughn Greene consider another location that would be more reasonable to the community expectation?
Yeah, unfortunately, well, fortunately, all of our locations are in residential areas. I don't know that any of the others would make any better option than this particular location. Actually, there are, based on the discussion tonight, I learned a couple of things as well, but there are only a very few crematoriums on the east side of town. So again, this all sort of gets back to convenience for being able to service our families, and of course understanding that there's this growing demand for this mode of disposition. We are simply just trying to meet those needs.
Right. And if there is community concern, pertaining to the addition of this facility, we'd really like to get to the heart of what those kind of genuine pressing issues are. In this, very important meeting, we've had the opportunity to dispel some of the myths around odor. We've been able to speak to how we are well within and even under, guidelines when we're speaking about compliance. We are really trying to service this community in the most comprehensive and best way that we can. So if there are larger, community concerns pertaining to this facility, we'd really like to understand them so we can help to address them and make everyone feel comfortable.
Okay. I want to thank you. We're running out of time very quickly. It looks like several of the typewritten questions have already been addressed. The one that I don't see addressed, there's 2 of them. One is, can you give us names of the other customers who have this unit? I would have to ask you to put in a Public Information Act request. We have it's called PIA. We have a PIA coordinator at MDE. You can go on the MDE website and it says Public Information Act request, and that coordinator can put that information together for you. We'll have to pull records to get that information. So please feel free to do that. Contact me. I can pass that along and see if we can get that to you. And then the other question is similar. It's where are these located? What other emissions are there? We can also, again, put this information together. I just need to have someone send me a note asking to have that put together. So we can give you the location of the other funeral homes with their addresses. There are the records, as Sana said, they're all public records of the compliance situations for all of our facilities. So that can also be put together. But we just need to have a Public Information Act request submitted. And again, it's on the Maryland Department of the Environment website. It's right in the front, easy to find it, click on it and send the request in. So we're back down to, we have 5 minutes.
Yeah, Shannon, I think there was one last technical question about odorless and invisible toxic
And
emissions that will occur, such as mercury. And so I didn't know if anybody from Matthews Environmental wanted to address that.
Yeah, the USEPA has conducted extensive testing on this matter. Mercury usually comes from dental amalgams, dental fillings, and that represents sort of less than 1% of the total mercury released in the United States. Silver amalgam dental fillings have been common for many years, but their use is actually in decline. We noticed that within the last 10 years, the use of mercury in fillings has decreased significantly as composite resins have been used instead and contain no mercury. And dentists and changes in dental practices have resulted in significantly less mercury entering the cremation stream, and thereby reducing mercury emissions by reducing the mercury input. Which, if there are no dental fillings and there's dental resins that have no mercury, then the mercury levels are going to be non-existent almost. So there should be no worry about mercury emissions.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So at this point, I'm going to have to close up the meeting. I'm sorry. So if you have additional questions, which it sounds like you all do, excuse me, Councilman Henry will take care of your question. You can send the information to me. I thought my email was up here, but I don't see it. If you want to contact me, it is shannon.heafy@maryland.gov. And
hang on 1 second, Shannon. I'm going to try and put up the
oh,
notice that shows.
Yeah,
it's on the notice right here. So
on the notice, yes, please. So
yeah,
feel free
Shannon.heafy.
Send me any questions you want. We'll do it the best I can, get those answered for you right away. Councilman Henry, are you still here? Can you unmute him?
Yes.
There you are. Okay, you've got like a minute.
To ask my question about emissions?
So I think he had a follow-up about emissions measurement, but I have that we're going to follow up with him on the number of crematories in Maryland and the types, what kinds they are, and then also emissions measurement and how we do that in Maryland.
Well, actually, there was a little bit of confusion there. I was asking how many crematoriums there were in Baltimore City.
Oh, in Baltimore City, right. So that answer is 2.
That answer is 2?
Yeah, the two in Baltimore City that we talked about earlier is On-Site Cremation Center, and I think it was Bayview Crematory.
Oh, so those are the only 2 in all of Baltimore City right now.
That's yes, that's correct.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that does put a little bit of a different spin on this. I did go back and check the paperwork for my father's affairs, and you were using Atlantic Crematory for that one, and they're located in an industrial park in Glen Burnie. So that's not that's not really one that's a easy one to go look at and say this is the equivalent situation. But my question about emissions management or measurement was, it sounds like you were saying that you only concern yourself with whether in an individual site is putting out X amount of emissions, but is there a check on what the background level of emissions are in an area before it opens?
Okay, so we have an air quality monitoring network, and it's basically governed by federal regulation where these air monitors are installed and operating, and they measure the background air pollution. And so there are several in the Baltimore City area, and that background concentration. So it's not, it's, so as part of this pre-construction, so this is a pre-construction permit, so it hasn't been installed yet. We would take this source's estimated potential emissions and also add it to the background concentration to ensure that this source doesn't have any impact on whether we would comply with national or state air quality standards. So we do that as part of the technical review prior to construction.
Okay, so that kind of answered my, not just my question, but it was kind of a follow-up on, I can't remember if it was Sandy or Phyllis's, about a concentration of facilities. So if there was another crematorium only a certain distance away, that the way you're regulating this would take that into account,
Right.
by already judging what the current level of background emissions are.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilman.
We can still follow up with you via email with all this information too.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, so I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. This has been wonderful. I appreciate your patience while we're working out the kinks. This is only the first one that we've done tonight, so far. So we've got a few more to work out. But send me, you've got my email in, pardon me, in the public notice. Please send me any more questions you have. Well, I'm going to try to get together more information about where the crematories are in the state. Although there are only 2 currently in the city, there are quite a few in Baltimore County, Carroll, Frederick, Anne Arundel County. There's a lot around the city. And so you can go in, if you were, I guess, to go and look at them or drive by them, they're nearby. And what other questions? We're going to get together more of the information on the emissions for Delegate Boyce and Councilman Henry. And I think Delegate McIntosh had some questions she sent over too. So, this is a beginning of the process. We, Senate has not yet done the technical review. There's modeling involved. There's the ambient air concentration she was talking about. There's quite a bit that has to be reviewed and to find out whether this installation is going to meet our requirements. And I'll do a really quickie thing. The air toxics that our information goes through, what Sana was talking about, is more restrictive than what the federal government allows. And when she was talking about the government, the person's exposure, it's if a person who was working 8 hours a day was exposed to XYZ, we would only allow 1/100th of what OSHA has approved. So ours is very, very restricted, very, very restricted, and that's for safety standpoint, our toxics program is one of the best in the country, which is great. So if you have other questions on any of these things, we will try to answer them ourselves, or we'll try to pass them on to either the folks from Matthews or from Vaughn Greene, and try to get the answers to you as quickly as we can. Anyone who wanted to participate, like Ms. Anthony, who signed in with somebody else, so I don't have your information, please send me an email with your contact information so that I can add you to the list. As we go through this process, I will be sending out information when the docket's updated to review more information that way. And when we get to the point of scheduling a hearing, you'll get a specific email giving you the details on that. So make sure you're up to date. Keep me up to date. Send on or tell your folks that are interested to contact me to get their information added to our interested party list. The more the better. That would be great. And I want to thank everyone for coming by and hanging out with us tonight. And thank you for the Millers and for the folks from Matthews, Sana. Thanks, everybody.
Great, thanks. Just one more thing. The in-person informational meeting, the same information will be presented again in person. Masks and social distancing will be required. You have to pre-register in advance. If you haven't already received a confirmation from Shannon, you would need to register in advance, and that's on this information on this notice and on our website as well, which is next Monday. You know, so, but if you think of additional questions and you would like to attend the in-person meeting, you can do so. If not, you can also email Shannon. We will get back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you. Thanks, folks. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night.
Kitchen make